here today. And in keeping with the long-term tradition of about 6 months, I introduced the introducer, and today our introducer is Jim March.
Well, Earl honors me by asking me to introduce David. I don't think he realized that the maternal grandmother of the wife of the uncle of my daughter's second husband was Sarah Abernethy. So this is a family. David is a political scientist. Now, for most of you, political science is an oxymoron. But for David, it is a discipline. And it's a discipline that he has distinguished. He had a kind of, unfortunately, elitist education. He went to the Hill School in Philadelphia. He's a preppy. And then, of course, he went to Harvard, where he got his bachelor's degree and Phi Beta Kappa. And then he went to Oxford, where he got a master's degree. And that prepared him to come back to Harvard to get his PhD. About as typical elite education as you can possibly imagine. And then, of course, he came to Stanford. Stanford wanted all the elite. This is a period when Stanford was trying to become something other than a mediocre regional university, and David was the instrument. He came here in 1965 and stayed. That's a pretty impressive elite record. Now, as a political scientist, I like the lighting in here. It's so good. Oh, I forgot to say one thing. David went to school when he was 5 years old, discovered he liked it, and he stayed. He has spent his entire life in the ivory tower of academia, as far as I know. He is a sub-Saharan African expert. He's done much research in Africa, spent much time in Africa. His magnum opus, and relatively few of my colleagues really have a magnum opus. His magnum opus is The Dynamics of Global Dominance, European Overseas Empires, 1415 to 1980. Now, how would you like to do that? He claims, I think probably accurately, that this book took 15 years to write and 3 years to cut so that someone would publish it. What it does is try to illuminate the political dynamics and historical significance of colonialism. Now, that's a courageous book for someone like David. It's courageous in two senses. It tries to serve both historians and political scientists. And you can't do that. Although political science is basically a historical discipline, political scientists try to find generalizations in single events. Historians try to find multiple single events in any generalization. So they don't get along very well most of the time. And David's book has received very good press. In one of the reviews by Stanley Hoffman, which is a little confounded because Stanley Hoffman worked with David at Harvard. But Stanley Hoffman, who's one of the great people in this field, described his book as masterly. The second way in which David is courageous is that he is an affluent product of elite education, white, Christian, and Anglo-Saxon, writing in a domain that is claimed as the unique prerogative of people who are less affluent, less white, less Christian, and less Anglo-Saxon, and less affluent. It isn't easy to write about colonial history or colonial dynamics without raising the ire of people who are less affluent, less white, less Christian, less, etc. But David did it, and he, I'm trying to find the quote. Well, maybe I won't. Oh yes. Emre Said, who is Turkish and Islamic, says the book marks David as a great scholar. And you get that kind of comment when you're an elite white Christian from a Turkish Islamic person. You've done very well. David's been a faculty lecturer for Stanford alumni on 13 trips, count them, to Sub-Saharan and North Africa, South Asia, Indian Ocean, and New Zealand. Many of you, I assume, have profited from him being the faculty lecturer. The highlight of that career was 2009, when he was the faculty lecturer on an around-the-world jet trip following more or less the route of Charles Darwin. David's made enormous contributions to Stanford, some small part of which have been acknowledged. He has twice received the Dean's Award for teaching. You have to understand that this is an award that almost any faculty member would die for, and virtually none ever receive. And David's the only person I know, there may be others, who has received it not once but twice. He's received the Dean's Lifetime Award for Lifetime Achievements in Teaching. He's received the Alumni Association's Richard Lyman Award and the very prestigious All-University Dinkelspiel Award for contribution to undergraduate education. He is recognized as a faculty superstar, and I am proud to count him as a colleague. Today, he talks about Nelson Mandela.
Thank you very much, Jim, for those kind words. Speaking of superstar, we have Jim March, who is a legend in the field of social science, and it's especially meaningful to me to be introduced in such a way by Jim. And I promise never to use the word elite in the rest of this talk. Let's start with two questions. Do great individuals make history? Or does history, and more broadly, the physical, social, and intellectual environment surrounding us, shape